Good evening. The Ranter is back to go into yet another rambling diatribe of the news of the day. It is now Thursday morning, half an hour after midnight. So much has gone by since the last time I did this, which is, again, a symptom of the whole flooding the zone thing, where you have so many things shooting at you at once that you don't really know what to focus on or where your outrage should go. And at the same time, while you are outraged at maybe one thing that they want you to be paying attention to and be distracted by, other things slide under the rug, which is potentially even worse. So I want to start with what I would consider to be a little bit worse, at least worse in terms of impacting the American people, impacting American children. This came up today. Trump's USDA secretary defends $1 billion cuts to funding for food banks and schools. The Trump administration is facing backlash from Democrats and school nutritional advocates over its recent decision to kill 2 federal programs and provided more than $1 billion in funding for schools and food banks to purchase food from local farms. Decision which comes as Republicans are pushing for deep cuts to the supplemental nutrition assistance programs underscores the MAGA movement's apathy towards food aid programs benefiting millions of poor millions of poor Americans, including many children. As The Guardian reported, the U.S. Department of Agriculture has slashed 2 programs that provided more than $1 billion for schools and food banks to purchase food from local farms and ranchers. About $660 million of those funds were contained in the local food for schools cooperative agreement program, which provided funds for schools and child care facilities, but is now being eliminated. The rest were part of the Local Food Purchase Assistance Cooperative Agreement Program, which provides funds for local food banks and other organizations. The USDA unfroze funds for existing agreements, but a second round of funding in the fiscal year 2025 has been nixed. On Tuesday, the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, faced a pointed question about her department's cut for such programs on Trump-friendly Fox News network. After reading a headline about the cuts, the anchor Bill Hemmer asked, "How do you justify this?" Rollins responded with a rambling and transphobic explanation in which she called the programs non-essential and equated them to other contracts she said the USDA canceled that supported what she called food justice for trans people in New York and San Francisco. In essence, the secretary portrayed these vital programs, which helps make sure kids and poor people don't starve, as forms of Biden administration largesse, baselessly claiming that they are evidence of a previous administration's trying to, quote, push taxpayer dollars out that is not reaching its intended targets, unquote. But, much like Elon Musk, who stood earlier this year and admitted his so-called Department of Government efficiency would make mistakes that he vowed to correct quickly, Rollins seemed to leave the room for a reversal. As we have always said, if we are making mistakes, we will own those mistakes and we will reconfigure, she said. But right now, from what we are viewing, the program was not essential. And it was a new program, and that it was an effort by the left to continue spending taxpayer dollars that were not necessary. Because feeding poor people and children apparently are not necessary. The Secretary's random slight against transgender people felt in line with the Trump administration's tactic of using anti-trans attacks to distract his followers from the pain his economic policies are likely to inflict on the country. As for the potential for a reversal, we should all be disgusted by the cruelty in requiring people who've benefited from these programs, hungry school children and people reliant on food banks, to hang their hopes of the Fed being the Fed on Musk or Rollins having an epiphany about their deservedness. Relatedly, ESPN football analyst Mina Kimes spoke about that cruelty in an episode of Pablo Torres Finds Out podcast. Kimes recounted her experience retweeting the story of Musk withholding the aid of U.S. Agency for International Development, which she said ultimately and surprisingly led Musk to reverse course on the specific program highlighted in the story. The point being, it is an indignity for everyone to have to live at the whim of an uber-wealthy and well-connected official steering the Trump administration. Okay. So there's that. Swear to God. And this is the latest of the string of shit that we've been seeing since the last time I did a video. The glib, smug bullshit that came out of Rollins, equating it somehow to transgender. It's not essential to feed poor people and children. Oh, we might make a mistake later. We may correct it, but until then. Is this the distraction of what we should be pissed off about as opposed to other things that are going on? Are the other things going on the distraction as opposed to things that we don't even see or hear about just yet? So many things have gone by since Zelensky sat in the Oval Office and being berated by two people sitting in comfortable chairs and comfortable couches, nowhere near the fighting, and telling him that, oh no, you're not acting like you want to end the war. And then mock him for not wearing a suit. You know, Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend, and there's a, why aren't you wearing a suit? Fuck you. It's so much to talk about, and yet you just get lost in the noise of the various things that's come and gone. And if I was any person that was capable of speaking to these great people, these people in the public eye, people like politicians and so forth, who are in this MAGA movement, who are supportive of this president, I would have questions as to asking them, why? When did you start supporting this? President Trump, since really during his first administration, where he talked about Greenland then, but then kind of backed off on it when we all saw it was ridiculous, is back again talking about Greenland, but then a little bit more serious, a little bit more on edge, saying that we were going to take it one way or the other. Really? Okay. It's serious enough that France has offered Denmark their military support in helping to defend it if Trump decided to have us invade and take Greenland. There is a great posting that was done on Middle America, which is the social media group that I admin on, that had a list, a timeline of all of Trump's declarations, pronouncements, statements involving Canada being taken by us to be made the 51st state, that he seems to be so geared to doing, that he can continue to say that and do that for months, according to this time frame. To the point where yesterday, surfacing off the coast of Halifax, Nova Scotia, was a French nuclear attack submarine to show solidarity and support. France and Canada has had a military agreement going back to 2019. However, the surfacing of this nuclear submarine unofficially is in direct response to Trump ratcheting up the rhetoric upon us annexing Canada. So, I'm going to circle back here about my questions. As I would ask the Republican Party, anyone in the Republican Party, to tell me when within the last year, 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, on your Republican Party platform, did any of you say declaratively, as the Republican Party, as representatives of the United States government, that it was in your platform to seize Greenland, to force the annexation of Canada? Because apparently some of you are supporting it now. You never mentioned it one word about that before, but you are supporting it now. Why? Why are you supporting it now? Because Trump said it. Why? Are you trying to appease Trump? Because he's so easy to be rolled over if you just flatter him. Why? I wish I was in the position to ask this question, but unfortunately I'm not. I would wish those who are in the news industry and who are reporters to ask these questions, but they won't. What does it take to say no to this person? That is an old but familiar question when it comes to Donald Trump, going back to his first administration. From that to our dealings and negotiations over the ending the war in Ukraine, where there was a framework that was agreed upon fairly recently, within this day and the last day, between Ukraine and the United States, in agreement of a ceasefire for 30 days. That Ukraine would then agree to the mineral deal that we were going to do in exchange for our continued support of them. Because in the last, within the last time period where Zelensky was kicked out of the White House for not bending over for Trump and Vance for their little stage show in front of the world, especially in front of Russian news that was in the room, we had cut off intelligence to Ukraine. We had cut off military aid to Ukraine. And as a result, perhaps, of the cutoff of our intelligence to Ukraine when Russia attacked Ukraine, I think attacked into Kiev, just attacked one of the hotels in the bombing that actually killed Americans that were there. Between then and now, then we have this agreement between Zelensky and our government for a ceasefire for 30 days, and we were just waiting for the ball to be in the court of Russia for Russia to agree with it. Russia decided no, they don't agree. There's an article, or there's a headline of an article for Trump responding to Russia not agreeing with it, which is supposed to be chilling. It's an 8-word chilling warning to Russia, but the warning was like, well, I hope that doesn't happen, or something along those lines. It wasn't fucking chilling. It was milquetoast. It was neutral. That was the closest thing to chilling. Then I don't know what these definitions of these words are now. The mineral deal is interesting because the rare earth minerals that is being talked about, a lot of it is not even in a position to be negotiated really by Zelensky, because where these are, which is mostly lithium, is currently being held in lands that was taken over by Russia. So it's like getting a mineral deal for something that they can't hold on to, but we'll agree to it once we get that land back to give you the options of that mineral once we get that back. But Russia doesn't want to get that back. Now, all this time, while we were not giving Ukraine information, intelligence reports, as we were no longer giving them military, monetary aid to help them in their defense, whenever Trump was asked about this thing and blaming Zelensky, it's all Zelensky's fault for continuing this war. Certainly not the fuckers who were invading his country. When asked, so, well, do you think Putin would agree with it? Oh yeah, Putin would agree with it. He'll agree with me. He'll agree with me. He wants peace. He wants peace as he's bombing them. He wants peace as he's bombing them. I fluctuate in my anger between of people. Should we just be angry at Trump? Or should we just be angry at the people around Trump? Trump is a buffoon. Trump will say anything that comes out of his fucking mind. He doesn't even remember the shit he says. He called Zelensky a dictator. And then days leading up to Zelensky show up in D.C., someone says, well, do you still think he's a dictator? He goes, I never said he was a dictator. When did I ever say that? I don't remember saying that. He doesn't remember what he said 10 minutes ago. He doesn't remember saying anything days ago. You can have stuff he says flagrantly on tape, which he'll deny ever saying. With the lack of hubris. He's fucking our country up in foreign powers, in the foreign theater. He's fucking us up domestically. While Doge runs wild, scattershot, cutting this, cutting that, cutting this. Going after that waste and fraud. Which translates to firing people. I said this in the last video, or maybe the video before. I think it was the last video. Where people who are Trump supporters, who are so advocate and gung-ho about people getting fired, they find themselves getting fired by the very people that are scattershot firing people for waste, fraud, and DEI. And people are saying, fuck around and find out, Trump voters, Trump supporters, near name. I'm not like that. I'm not happy that these people, even if they're Trump supporters, are losing their jobs. I'll comment to the fact that I apparently have more human empathy than they do for other people that they consider undesirable or own the libs. But I'm not dancing in the street because a Trump supporter loses his job. Or the delusions of their God King. Or Donald Trump, because, Elon Musk is above. Everything they touch, they ruin. Everything they go after, gets ruined. In their scattershot of them going after that waste, they fire people, and then they try to hire them back because they know what to do with the nuclear weapons that we have, and we fire them. We probably should get those people back. Or the people who have who are scientists and the doctors involved in the study of Ebola. We might want to get those people back. You know, one of the early things that happened in the second Trump administration when they were taking over, they were trying to stop the information that was going out between agencies, some concerning the spread of bird flu. Not only that is going from not only contracting from birds, but it's contracting from other domesticated animals until we get 1 or 2 cases are showing up in human beings. They don't want people to know that. Why? Because that might affect egg prices that is still going up. And I find it fucking funny that the same people last year who was going after Biden and the Biden economic fall and crash and this forth, and eagerly talking about, oh, what about the prices of eggs? What about the prices of eggs? Oh, well, you're saying inflation is down, but the prices of eggs are now the same people that goes up and says, stop talking about the price of eggs under Trump. Shut up about the price of eggs, Charlie Kirk says, which Trump then, retweets or whatever he does on his fucking Truth Social. Don't pay attention to the economy now. Oh, no. We're saving the consumers millions of dollars that they don't even notice because the prices are still up. But we're getting that waste, fraud, and abuse. The taxpayers will love us for it until they fuck us over with, cutting from the IRS that might affect people's tax refunds. They fuck people over. They fuck people over with a smile on their face. They fuck people over with Elon Musk. I have a chainsaw. I'm cutting. If it wasn't just about these programs, about this laundry list of things that they found, that they get Fox News to read about, and they get Piers Morgan to read about, all these ridiculous things that these programs are doing, like condoms for this, or millions of dollars for transgender story time and educations in Venezuela or wherever. Any of this laundry list that could be real, could be imaginary, could be shit that they're just making up on the fly and they want us to believe that's what's going to happen. People are losing their jobs. That seems to be more of an issue than, $10,000 providing hammers or toilet seats. I mean, they go down the list to find the most ridiculous things, especially things that will affect their politics, going after them DEIs, going after them trans folk, going after, gay folk or women's studies or whatever, and just, get rid of that, and they'll be with a smile on their face. Make sure these people suffer by not having jobs, and then making sure that they can't get much of a job anywhere else. So much to talk about here. But then, this Doge agency, this department that isn't really a department, but nonetheless is the spearhead in the Trump administration. It's kind of funny that the people that they're cutting in the IRS are the very forensic accountants that would be investigating, tax fraud in billionaires. Whoa, who would have thunk that? Cut so many people from the FAA while planes are either falling from the sky, aborting landings, aborting takeoffs, having near misses. That's cut the already low population in the FAA. Try to get people from SpaceX to take over. Geez, no self-interest there too? How many more of these cuts are we going to find out has a byproduct that will assist Elon Musk or Donald Trump financially? But so many. I'm going to bounce back and forth between topics. I'm going to circle back around on certain things. To wit, the pro-Palestinian student organizer of the protest against Israel, Mahmoud Mohammed. We don't know where he is now. He got arrested for the protests. People who were so happy of his happy of his arrest for his protest. They want him deported for exercising his First Amendment right as a U.S. resident because he was going to school here. Nowhere in this list of charges were there actually criminal charges. All he did was speak. And that seems to be enough. In the land of the First Amendment, speaking is enough. We always have to, in these types of situations, we always feel the need, we have to qualify what we say about this because we have to, we have to rush ahead and try to justify what we're saying or, try to emphasize one thing or another. Like, we have to say that, we don't agree with what he says. If he goes really hard against Israel, go hard against Jewish folk, and his rhetoric is just god awful. We always have to qualify that to continue our point because some knee-jerk person out there says, "Oh, you don't agree with him being arrested, then you must be pro-Hamas, anti-Semite." No. But the thing is, the First Amendment doesn't protect popular speech. The First Amendment protects speech. And that protection doesn't mean that you get fired from your job. That you can be prevented from being fired from your job by, like you're protected, that you can say whatever racial slur bullshit that you can say on the job and no one can stop you because First Amendment. That's not what it means. That means that the state cannot arrest you for your speech. Now, as far as I know from this young man, advocating pro-Palestinian points in the face of a constant invasion from Gaza where people are getting killed by Israeli soldiers, Israeli bombings by the Israeli government, protesting that is not illegal. I know people like to think it should be illegal, but it's not illegal. And just because people say shit that you don't like, that I could not like, doesn't mean they don't have a right to say it. There were Nazi soldiers, Americans, in Nazi uniform, doing the Sieg Heiling, marching up and down the streets, because a drag queen was telling stories to children in drag story hour in a library. No one was arresting them for marching. We have a history of bad speech being protected under the First Amendment. That we have allowed the marches of the Ku Klux Klan up and down Pennsylvania Avenue, up and down the mall in Washington, D.C. We have allowed, according to our Constitution, and according to the First Amendment right, to allow the Westboro Baptist Church to protest military funerals because there's gay people around. We corded them off that they can't be on, in front of people's faces, but they're allowed to be there. They're allowed to protest. They're allowed to say their evil fucking shit and hide behind their Bible for it. But no one's deporting them for their words. No one's arresting them for their words. Should you like or not or dislike what this young man said in his pro-Palestinian protest against Israel? No, you don't have to like it. You don't have to dislike it, but you don't have to like it. No one is requiring you to agree. You could disagree. You could counter-protest. At the start of the involvement in this conflict between Israel and Gaza this time around, after October 7th, there were protests and there were counter-protests. When they started putting up the pictures of the hostages, when, Jewish students were doing that, and then people were ripping them off, that was bullshit too. Ripping out the pictures, ripping out the names, that was bullshit too. Again, one of these qualifications where you have to qualify, no one should be... No. Protests could be protests, but you can't, physically get into people's faces, threatening to assault them, threatening anything about them. That's different. That weakens your argument. That weakens your stance here. But if you're not doing that and you're just saying shit to protest, there's nothing wrong with that according to our Constitution. That doesn't mean you have to like it or dislike it, but they're allowed to have that opinion and express it. A federal judge ordered him not to be deported, but we don't know where he is either. So he's gone to the black sites. Has he? We don't know. But people who are these talking heads for those who are pro-Trump, pro-MAGA, who says, just deport him, he deserves it, he's saying it, he's being paid by Hamas. Do you have any evidence? I don't need evidence! It's obvious! Really? It's that obvious? Really, it's that obvious? You know what? That sounds a little bit like Russiagate, don't it? Is that when people decided to take that 10 steps across the dance floor, their explanations is that what happened with Trump and Russia during the 2016 campaign to that presidency, people bought that because it was obvious. No real evidence other than the breadcrumbs. But you are not letting people who believe that, off the hook for Russiagate, but we should let you off the hook that this person had exercised a speech that you don't agree with, but that should be enough to violate the First Amendment rights of a U.S. citizen and then a resident, and then deport him for opposing a viewpoint of our government. I mean, they derail, you know, they twist things around when concerning about Black Lives Matter. And whatever you think about the people who founded Black Lives Matter and how they pretty much took advantage of it, of the own people over it, in order for them to make personal money off of it, because it became a money-making thing for those who were manipulating the system involved in it, in terms of getting donations for the cause. The cause was still good. Men, women, and children without due process were being killed. All for having different skin pigmentation. And it happened so frequently that, at least in my mind, it became a kind of a cynical joke. That a guy wants to take some time off, he may as well shoot someone, and then he'll have an administrative leave for 30 days while they clean it up, while the blue wall and their governmental, i.e., their lawyers, clean it up afterwards, and then they get off. There was a movement in the past week from these people close to Trump to try to get Trump to pardon Derek Chauvin, the cop who killed George Floyd. And their arguments is that, oh no, the drugs killed him, he didn't kill them. 2 autopsies says otherwise, but they don't care. What is the motivation of that? But this young man and his unpopular speech makes him deserved to be arrested and to be deported, even though there are no criminal charges of him doing anything criminal. Just speech. What happened to us? What happened to the United States? We gone so far in our partisan bullshit that this is acceptable to one side? Is this the candy store for those who've been wanting to do shit like this, but they couldn't because too many years of us being actually trying to be decent human beings that prevented them from enjoying the reckless hate to make people suffer and then laugh about it? It's getting so bad. Another thing I heard of today. It's getting so bad with our relationship between our government, or the Trump government of the United States, and Canada, is that the Trump administration is floating the idea that if there's any Canadians that are staying more than 30 days in the United States, they need to be registered and fingerprinted. Gee, that reminds me of one of the ideas that Trump floated during the 2016 campaign upon having a Muslim registry. Alongside of that Muslim ban that he did manage to get with the help of Rudy Giuliani, who laid it out so perfectly in front of the world that we'll get you a Muslim ban, we'll make it completely legal. We just say it won't be Muslim, we'll just say troubled areas. It happen to be places that have Muslims in it, but troubled areas. What is there to do What is there to say? Is there anything that can be done by our Democrats, by sane Republicans, by independents? Or are we all screaming into the pages of the same book of the American downfall, and all we can do is just read to the next page and see how it's getting worse and worse and worse, and you're telling the people on the page that is doing it to stop? But all you are is the reader. There's nothing you can do but read. Read to the next page, read to till the downfall is complete. Trump makes the bold statement that says anyone that damages a Tesla would be considered a domestic terrorist. That it's illegal to boycott buying Teslas. That's illegal. That's an illegal boycott. How? How is that illegal boycott? Are you mandatoring people buying Teslas? Is that supposed to be the American thing now, that we are compelled to buy Teslas to prove our Americana here? How pathetic is it that the White House is now presented as a car lot for crazy Elon and his Teslas by Donald Trump? This crazy Elon, all these Teslas must go! Come to Pennsylvania Avenue and go to the new dealership right there. It's the White House with the pillars in front. See the showman, Trump. He'll help you. He's got the list. He's got the talking points. The President of the United States became a car dealer for Elon Musk. That's a sentence that we would never think in a million years. That could be said. Could be said here. They justify news organizations kicked out of White House press briefings because of them not, complying with the use of the administration's preferred terms. Preferred terms. In the parlance of our community, transgender brothers and sisters. Yeah, they didn't want the AP to dead name the Gulf of America by calling it the Gulf of Mexico. See, if the Gulf of Mexico was a transgender person, oh well, then we gotta keep to that name. But they didn't like the AP saying that, so the AP got out, was kicked out. Usually, once again, the chosen talking head for the administration is awful. Apparently very thin-skinned, doesn't understand the concept of tariffs. And when AP came back in and asked a question about tariffs, and she just said it was a tax cut for the Americans, for the American people. It's a tax hike for the foreign companies, and the person responding to her says, he actually had experience paying a tariff, and has nothing to do with the companies. It has to do with the price that is being paid by the consumer. And then thin-skinned spokeswoman just sort of, pouted that they're trying to mock her ability to understand economics, and she shouldn't have called him in the first place. And smug little head turn to the next person. You know, it's weird because when I had my problems with the Bush administration during their time in office, you know, you can righteously oppose what they were doing, especially in the war on terror and how they came about certain things, but you didn't get the air of incompetence off of them. Maybe misled, maybe their way of thinking was not your way of thinking, and you had arguments and you had debates, but in all, you had a feeling that these people that in front of you in the Bush administration knew what they were doing. Maybe their motivations was not your motivations, or what they wanted to do doesn't really align to what you want to do, but you kind of got the feeling that they knew how to walk and chew gum at the same time. This Trump administration? No. We are not getting that confident vibe that they know what the fuck they're doing. From the people surrounding Trump, to Elon Musk, to Trump himself. When Trump is called out for things that's happening in the economy that is tanking, and the person asks him, about things being erratic, he's just, things are not being erratic, I'm just being flexible. No, it's erratic. A very famous tweet of Trump, or Truth Social posting, I don't remember which, of him saying if a president is in office and the stock market goes down to 1,000 points, and that president should be impeached. I'm waiting. It's very funny how we hold to President Trump's words until we're not supposed to hold to President Trump's words. The latest thing, them going after the Department of Education. That's great. That's great. Go after the Department of Education. That's great. Have it decided by the states. Great. So, when you cut the shit out of that, especially you're cutting food banks that are going to hungry children, what's the motivation? I know some people have criticisms about the Department of Education. And a lot of that has to do with what some teachers or some school boards and some principals or whatever just daring to show human respect to people who are not, one particular shade or a particular gender identity or a particular sexuality or sexual orientation. And so when they give them the human respect of acknowledgement, that's a bridge too far. That's shoving it down your throats. That's indoctrinating children. That's grooming. That's DEI. Or then before DEI, the boogeyman before that was critical race theory. Now you notice how critical race theory, when that became the boogeyman, and people were looking into that, then they go, let's look into the libraries. What do we have in the libraries? This is indoctrinating. There's sexuality bullshit here that isn't really there, but we'll say it's there so we can scare parents. Schools are purposely, holding back information upon students that are getting transitioned without their parents' knowledge. The story that the various things that Trump said during his not State of the Union speech, including the one little story about the that they had the mother there for the family, that they said that the school board hid the knowledge that the child was trying to transition or something along those lines. And then it turns out, no, that's inaccurate, because the family approached the school board themselves to talk about what it would take to help, soft transition their child who wanted to transition, and have a discussion about it. And then for some reason that we don't know, the script got flipped, and all of a sudden it became the school was purposely and indoctrinating this child into transitioning without their parents' knowledge. Ah! It was an interesting conversation that I had recently when it talks about exposure in terms of like visibility. Especially in demographics that certain people want to demonize. To be that other that you can point to get all your fears and hatreds and insecurities out on and blame them as they are the boogeymen. And that it doesn't take much to trigger this. You show someone human respect, human dignity, and simply acknowledgement of their existence seems to be enough to trigger some folk that they think that you're shoving it down their throat. Oh, the transgenders are just being shoved down our throats. The Democrats are only talking about transgender. That's all they're talking about. Don't vote for the Democrats because all they want to do is, transition your children. Your little children. They're trying to transition them when they're a sperm and an egg. Whatever my opinions are on transition, especially when it comes to children, is irrelevant. Because I'm not going through that. And whatever I know, or whatever my opinion is based solely on ignorance. How many people have the maturity to admit to that before they open their fucking mouths about things that they don't understand? Now, I have indirect experience. Not directly towards me, not directly in my family, but adjacent to my family, adjacent to me, of knowing a person growing up and was in the process and is in the process of transitioning. And they were young, and the parents were supportive of it. They weren't doing puberty blockers or any transitional surgeries or anything up into, because this person in particular was still in high school. And none of that, from their point of view, none of that was going to be happening until after graduation. And then during the time that they accepted the point of transition, this person going through this also went through therapy about it, so that they can understand what they want to do. They want to ensure that the choice is right, because people do regret it afterwards at times. Some people don't, some people do. Both are valid. And that's the thing, because in this particular type of situation, either it's all one side or all another side. One side's valid, the other side's not valid. And, the relationship dynamic that I have with this particular person and the person adjacent that I was in relationship with is no longer there. But I still feel for this person that was transitioning when I know them. And one of the things that bothers me in this conversation in terms of the transgender, and I'm sorry I'm getting off of the whole Trump derangement rage syndrome here, but this is an important thing, at least from my point of view, is the overemphasizing on trans women and not a word about trans males. You are concerned upon what would happen if a trans woman goes into a bathroom with women, fearing that the transgender woman is there simply to be a predator and looking for a way to victimize a woman in there. And my concern goes, well, what about the trans males? I had this conversation online about this, and someone got insulting and rude towards me for me bringing it up, completely not understanding what I was talking about, because he was like, oh, well, no, well, fuck you, there's no problem with a trans male because they're not going to be raping a male. Yeah, that's not my concern. My concern is that for those of you who are so adamant on the idea of a transgender woman going into a women's bathroom looking for trouble, does that mean you think that males by default would be looking for trouble, and then a trans male goes into that bathroom? And what if they find out that that trans male is a trans male? Pre-op trans male. Do you have any concern of what happens to him? Because the trans male thing doesn't come up. I think the only trans male that anyone will ever talk about with any consistency and still mock him is Elliot Page. And some of that, I think, is out of jealousy, because when Elliot Page shows up and doing a shirtless picture or whatever, he got better abs than those who have a problem with him being Elliot Page now. But yeah, we don't hear that type of conversation and the worry and concern about the trans male. Only the predatory, evil trans women. Scary. And for the past year, I've been advocating for a particular solution, especially towards the bathroom problem. You don't want trans women to go into the girls' room? Simple way of solution there. Let's not have a girls' room. Let's not have a boys' room. Let's not have a unisex room. Let's just have sets of stalls. Take that very open space, take that same space, take all the plumbing in there. Instead of having a big open communal area, stalls. One by one by one. Stalls, toilet, sink, there, paper towels, toilet paper, whatever, in the stall. No men's room, no women's room, just little rooms. For 1.5 people, large enough if you have to take a child in to assist a child in going to the bathroom if they're not able to do it themselves. Well, with that, we can't do that because that will cost too much money. That's not cost effective. That's too much effort. That's too much work. Yeah, the solution is too much work. So let's continue having a problem. Let's continue to have the problem that we will debate about and argue about, going back and forth and being shits to each other over, instead of having a fucking solution. Or at least a reasonable solution as to just saying, the transgender person just shouldn't be trans. Shouldn't be trans. Take your makeup off. Stop pretending to be this. Stop pretending to be that. No. And when it comes back to, once again, that it's so triggering to people to even have basic human respect and acknowledgement. On a thread concerning this particular topic, going back and forth between a transgender poster and another poster who doesn't want to acknowledge the transgender at all, and he wouldn't want to give them the respect of acknowledge them by name. I responded by tagging the transgender person, the person that I know, and in quotations I go, "Hi, I'm Matthew." And I go, "Hi, I'm so-and-so." And I go, "So-and-so, pleased to meet you." Human respect. Human fucking respect. And gosh darn, it wasn't all that hard. We don't know what's going on in each other's heads, and to make the assumptions of it is ridiculous. It almost goes back to my policy, my stance on never doing my best, because even I have human error, doing my best to never generalize a massive group, even a political party, even a groupthink of MAGA, by thinking MAGA thinks all alike. As people who are lazy to think Democrats are all alike, or liberals are all alike, or conservatives are all alike. That is lazy. and that's disrespectful. So land the plane here. I'm going so far afield, but it was like something I just wanted to get off my chest about. I would like to end with a kind of a conversation I had today, where I had a realization about what's going on in Ukraine and some people's arguments in terms of, why Ukraine was invaded. And there's always this argument, this circular argument, that the person will say, in no uncertain terms, that I condone or justify the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but then nonetheless will justify and condone the Russian invasion of Ukraine for such and such reasons, usually having involved with the United States and its machinations against Russia, or the encroachment of NATO influence, that they didn't want Ukraine to join the NATO because then it would be a NATO country, and therefore it would be a neighbor of Russia as a NATO ally that would have the security of NATO to protect it under Article 5. Then I realized something in these arguments. Because I was going on the basic logic assumption that Putin wants to reconstitute the USSR in terms of the Russian control of the land of the Eastern Bloc. Doesn't have to be communist to still want to put things back where it was. I mean, from Chechnya to Crimea, Donbass, now in Ukraine. So you take the argument, and it occurred to me. So the justification and condoning of Russian invasion of Ukraine is to stop the encroachment of NATO and United States influence in Cold War United States machinations that is real or imagined that could be harming Russia in this. Sounds awful familiar to me. Sounds like the justification that the United States had on certain conflicts. So, does that mean that Ukraine is Russia's Vietnam War? A war that the United States had to fight in a proxy against Russia and China over the encroachment influence of communism? That they wanted to stop the advancement and invasion of communism, that they wanted to defend southern Vietnam from being overrun and being taken over and being controlled by communism? Sounds awful familiar. It sounds kind of like that, isn't it? Just going any other way. So if that's the case, then I guess the Vietnam War is justifiable for the United States, right? To us getting involved, to send our children out, our young folk at the time, who are obviously older than I am now, that had to draft them off and send them off and ship them off to fight in Vietnam. Because we didn't want communism continuing its influence, expanding its influence. We didn't want the machinations of the Soviet Union and communist China spreading. That might damage our personal self-interest, our geopolitical interests. Much like Russia didn't want the United States Cold War machinations, much like it doesn't want the expansion and spread of NATO. Certainly doesn't want one of the pieces, their fallen missed pieces of their Russian puzzle to get entry into NATO. where it would be protected under Article 5 by NATO. And as we saw today, for the 30-day ceasefire that the United States and Ukraine agreed with, Russia did not agree with it, because one of the reasons was they did not want NATO troops there to protect Ukraine. And that's a complete non-starter for them to stop their invasion. And I'm going to kind of end with this, with a comparison between Russia and Israel here, because there are eerie similarities that the people that are arguing with me about it seems to willfully not notice. See, they will condemn Israel for their invasion of Gaza, that they're grinding up of the cities in Gaza, the killing of people in Gaza, killing the people fleeing Gaza, fleeing in safe corridors that were established. They still bomb the shit out of them. Killing them in refugee camps where they were told they would be safe in these refugee camps while they're moving away. Haha, no, fuck you. They still bomb them. They condemn them, but they don't condemn Russia. They say Israel attacked unprovoked. You could say October 7th, but a lot of people are digging up October 7th and saying if Hamas really, really, really instigated without provocation their attack on October 7th, or if there was something more behind the scenes. Real or imagined. But Russia, oh, they were provoked. They were provoked by the U.S., by NATO. They had to invade to defend themselves. They had to invade with their tanks and kill people to defend themselves. Condemn Israel. Don't condemn Russia. They're both doing the same things. They're both grinding up cities. They're both killing mass of people. And also similarity. Both invaders, when asked to join the peace table to stop these conflicts, neither Russia nor Israel is getting any consequences for their invasion. There's no concessions that they are asked to make to stop their aggression. No. We're not going to ask the aggressors, the invaders that are there, pointing their weapons to kill. We're going to do the negotiating against the Palestinians and Ukrainians. It becomes the political opinion of the United States, thanks to the Trump administration, by their agents, Elise Stefanik and Mike Huckabee, that Israel has biblical right to Gaza and the West Bank. That means that is the United States' official stance. It is also the official stance of the United States that Vladimir Zelensky is the true cause of the conflict. That Russia, thanks to the United States at the UN, is not to be condemned by the UN for their invasion. Trump says that the United States will take over Gaza and build Gaza up really good for those who are hanging around locally. And then the Palestinians will be sent away. They have to be sent away. They have to go. They have to go away. That's funny today when he's with the leader of Ireland today during that horrible press conference that he had there. That's another story that I'm not even getting to because I'm over an hour now. That he said that No one's kicking out the Palestinians. No one's kicking them out. You fucking said that they was going to go. You said that they had to go. You fucking liar. You said it, Donald Trump, that they had to go. That that the United States was going to take over Gaza, clean up real nice, so that the people can move in. Who are the people? Gee, I wonder who they are. Because it's not the Palestinians. But that was one of the many things that were flooding the zone, so we're not supposed to remember what's going on in Gaza. I made that point to somebody recently, is that when the shit was hitting the fan with the negotiations with us and Zelensky at the Oval Office, I made the point of, well, gee, what's happening in Gaza? Because we're too many focused on Ukraine. Well, now it's like, what's happening in Ukraine? Now we have this over here, or this over here, or this over here, and that point. I mean, we're playing musical chairs domestically. They don't want us to know who's the head of Doge. They'll say Elon Musk, but then they'll say in court, no, it's not Elon Musk, but it's Elon Musk. No, it's not. At the White House pressing, the spokeswoman, I'm not remembering her name, and I'm not going to insult her, I mean, because that's low-hanging fruit. But just like, we're not entitled to know who the leader is. That's pretty much what she was saying to the press when they were asking her, who's the head of Doge. We're not at liberty. Oh, the most transparent administration ever. You're not supposed to know. I'm not telling you. Shh. No. A agency of Doge that is cutting scattershot, taking all this money, making people fired, making agencies and companies rethink their policies, and compelling them to fire people because of DEI. But we're not supposed to know who the leader of Doge is, who's running the show. We're not supposed to know. These people are supposed to get fired, but we're not supposed to know the name of the person who's running Doge? But again, ending this back where I was supposed to end it. There's haunting similarities between Israel and Russia involving their invasions, especially when Donald Trump is the president of the United States. Israel and Russia gets the pass. They can invade who they want. We are not negotiating a peace treaty for Ukraine and Russia and the Gaza conflict versus Israel. We are negotiating the surrender of Ukraine and Gaza, and coming soon, the West Bank. And we are letting the invaders that invaded win. They're getting no concessions. They don't have to give up anything. They don't give up a goddamn thing. And they're the ones that invaded. The justifications of why Russia invaded Ukraine, maybe you can find justification. But the justification ended when the tank treads crossed the border, when the first shell fell, when the first person got shot. Justification for an invasion ends in that invasion. Because had they not invaded, and if any of these arguments concerning the expansion of the United States and NATO, or whatever agreements that was made but was broken, because as much as you want to talk about the United States breaking codes or not allowing NATO to spread, but they're NATO spreading, Putin also broke 25 ceasefire deals over the course of the years. He was always coming for Ukraine, taking it a piece at a time, wanting it back. Makes me wonder, perhaps we shouldn't have declawed Ukraine in the 90s. Maybe they should have stayed the second most armed nuclear power. But no. We negotiated them out of the thing that would have protected them. Their nuclear arsenal. We made them give it up in exchange for us defending them. But look who's defending them now. Someone who is so in service of Russia that will negotiate them out of existence as a country and just become another swallowed up state, as if we were back in the 1950s. And so it goes, like Russia and Ukraine, like Israel and Gaza. Another negotiated surrender that they expect. They expect the Palestinians to be moved off into different countries, that once we clean it really nice, then Israel will roll right in. Then there will be no Palestinians. They'll be gone. Ethnically cleansed. Washed his hands and sealed their fate. I'll leave you with a quote, especially for those who still find there's a justification in Russia invading, causing that chaos, causing the death, causing the destruction, because they were provoked. Quote, "I will not let a man bring me down so low that will make me hit him." Unquote. Paraphrased. The educator Booker T. Washington. The ranter rants because the urge to rant is rising. See you next week.